Hey guys, what's up? It's Emily. Welcome back to my channel. Happy 2024. Today, I am going to be sharing with you guys all of the books. Is my hair okay? I feel like I'm gonna find a piece of my hair when I'm editing this and just want to move it. I like this one's cute. I kind of like that. Hey guys, so today I'm going to be sharing with you the 11 books that I read in December. December was another really good reading month for me. I read 11 books in November, which is the most I had ever read in a month, and then I also read 11 books in December, and that is because it is the second month I really took advantage of audiobooks. I listened to a few audiobooks in the past. I only had like that audiobook, and that was the only thing I was reading and listening to, whereas now like I'll either be listening to and reading the same book at the same time, which obviously helps me read it faster because during moments where I wouldn't be able to read, like cooking, showering, washing my face, whatever, I can actually be reading. And then other times I'll be reading a physical copy of a book and then listening to another audiobook. So it's just been kind of helping me get through things a little bit faster. Not that reading, like the purpose of reading isn't to get through things, but there's so many books that I want to read. Yeah, audiobooks have just kind of helped me find my momentum a little bit. And I also just love audiobooks because I'm an actor and it's nice to put a voice to some of these things. The combination really works well for me because I do like to get a sense of what it's like to just sit down with the book and with the writing and kind of find the voice on my own with my own imagination and then have someone else do it. It's just a nice combination. I don't know. Okay, let's just get into these books now. Let me tell you a little bit about if I hit my TBR. I think I read everything on my December TBR except for one book. And I've only been picking 6 books for my TBR just to kind of like create space for me to like read what I want. I'm not going to be doing a January TBR, by the way. And the reason for that is that I just have so many series that I'm getting caught up with that I just want to focus on them. So next month, I'm going to try something new for my TBR. So stay tuned for that. I read all but Cruel Prince from my December TBR. So I read 5 out of 6 from that video, which I think is pretty good. So let's get into it. The first book I read, I didn't listen to the audiobook at all to this one, is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This was very, very highly recommended by a lot of booktubers that I watch. This book, it's like 500 pages and I was kind of like, oh, bummer, like to start my month off with like kind of a longer book. It's not super long, but it's like kind of long. It went by so quickly. The beginning was a little slow. Like the first 80 pages, I was like, I don't care. I got into it and I was like, oh, this is really good. I loved the 2 main characters. They were amazing. It goes back and forth between Peyton and I already forgot their names and Kai. It's kind of like Hunger Games-esque. I originally gave this 5 stars and I think I'm gonna bring it back to like a 4.25. I'm getting a little bit more stringent with my ratings, by the way, just because I've been reading more and so I just have more sample size, if that makes sense. I think the fact that I can't remember like a lot of specific details about this book is the reason why I've lowered it a little bit, but I did really enjoy it while I read it. I read it super quickly. I really love the main characters. Peyton is a badass, but she's not as much of a badass as some other female characters that I am used to reading. For example, those written by Sarah J. Maas. But the whole thing is that she's literally like powerless and she doesn't have power. What I like about this book is I think it's a really nice balance of political and romantic, and the world building is not complicated at all. So like if you are new to fantasy, I think that this would be a nice place to start. There's like little to no world building, but you still get like a nice political, meaningful plot line and romance. And I think that that's like a really nice balance for a fantasy book. I definitely recommend this. I'm really excited to read Reckless this year. I also just love the cover of this. I don't know why. It was on one of my like favorite covers in my end of the year book tag. So yeah, I'd give this a 4.25 out of 5 and I really highly recommend this. The next book I read, I listened to the audiobook for, which was great. It was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This book was so fucking good. I definitely recommend the audiobook version. I didn't pick up the book once, so this is just based off of just the audiobook. I thought it was so funny. I think it's considered literary fiction, which I haven't read a lot of, and this book really made me want to get into that genre more. It's basically about this girl who is white. She's a writer. She's kind of an average writer. You know, she went to school for it, and I think she's good, but it's like she's probably like nothing special. And she has this friend that she went to school with. Her friend is this Chinese American writer who has had a lot of success, super, super famous. In the first chapter of the book, she basically shows June, I think the main character's name is, this manuscript she's been working on about like Chinese immigrants during World War I. Yes, World War One. She literally dies. And so this girl June like takes her manuscript and basically like works on it a little bit more and like publishes it under her own name, except it's not her own name. She like changes it to be this like ethnically ambiguous name. So it's very satirical and it's very smart. And I love this book and I gave it 5 stars. Like, I highly recommend this. It was so fun. The next book I read, I did not listen to the audiobook for at all. I read Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. This is part of like the duology. When in Rome is the first book, which I loved. I gave it a 4.5. This book, I'd honestly give it like a 2.5 maybe. Like When in Rome was so good. I love the like famous girl pop star goes to small town and like discovers the meaning of life trope. And this, I didn't feel really connected to the characters. I would honestly say you could skip this one, but I recommend When in Rome very highly. It is a quick read though, and a lot of people actually like this, so I don't know, maybe you can give it a try. I personally would skip it. Then I listened, fix this hair situation. Oh my god. Then I listened to Matthew Perry's audiobook for his memoir called Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. Yes. This was obviously really sad because he wrote it and he just died, and he also narrated the audiobook. I really love his sense of humor, his dryness, like his sarcasm, and that really comes through in the book because he wrote it and he's also narrating it. So if you at all are connected to Friends, if you like that show, or if you just have a weird fascination with celebrities dying like I do, then maybe you want to check this out. It deals a lot with his struggles with addiction and kind of how he rose to fame and all of that stuff. It was a really good read, and I definitely recommend the audiobook, as I do, I think, for most memoirs, I want to say. Next, we have Girl A, which I did actually a combo of book audiobook. There's actually 3 books this month that I listened to on audiobook that had British main characters. I don't like read British characters in a British accent like in my mind. I haven't developed that skill yet, so I read all books in my own American accent. There was something about listening to this book that just brought through subtleties of where the character came from, just listening to it in the authentic accent of the character. Even having said that, this book did not hit for me. I really appreciate the story, the way it was written. It didn't hit. I'd probably give it a 2.5. I would say if you read it, I would probably go with the audiobook. This was not like a super compelling read for me, unfortunately. I would love to like see this movie or like be in it. It's a really harrowing story. It was just the way it was written, again, didn't really super click. So do with that what you will. Finally read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I did part of it on audiobook as well, which was nice, just to kind of mix it up. I love this book so much. I give it a 5 out of 5. I want me and Jean-Luc to play the 2 main characters. It is so beautiful. We all know this book is amazing. Like, it's been so highly recommended for a long time now. I don't know what else to say. If you haven't read this, read it. Oh, I guess I'll just say a little bit what it's about. It's about this woman, Addie, who in the late 1600s basically makes a deal with the devil to be immortal, but the catch is that nobody remembers her. So she just goes through her whole life, hundreds of years to present day basically, and nobody remembers her. She'll have an exchange with somebody and then like she'll leave, come back a minute later, they won't remember her. Imagine that. Like, you can't rent a house, you can't get a job, like there are so many things that like you just can't do. So she's really learned to like live a very specific life that has some advantages, obviously, but it mostly just sucks. I don't want to give too much else away, but that's kind of the premise of it. Next, I read The House Across the Lake. This was such a very, very quick read. I really, really loved the main character. I definitely picture myself playing her. She is this actress, daughter of a Broadway legend, musical theater legend. Let's be real, I'd want to actually play that character, but I'm a little young for that. Recently, her husband passed away, and so she's been staying at this lake house to avoid some bad press, and she's been drinking herself into oblivion. There's these neighbors across the street, or across the lake, not across the street. The woman is a model, and the guy is this like tech guy. She saves this woman from drowning one day. In the beginning of the book, this is not a spoiler. And then she goes missing later on, this woman that she saved. So it's kind of about like where she went and all this stuff. And I want to give this book 5 stars, but I have to say, like, I'm pretty good at predicting thrillers and mysteries. That's why I read them. This one, like, there is no way to predict what happens with this book. To me, I think it's a little far-fetched. That's kind of the only reason I'd give this a 4 out of 5, but I really did enjoy the book, and I flipped through it. It was one of those books where like I just immediately understood who all of the characters were. The writing was really good. I would highly recommend it, but it's pretty funny, honestly. Like, if you know, like if you've read it, like you probably know what I'm talking about, but okay. Anyway, next I decided I'd be Christmassy and read A Winter in New York by Josie Silver. This was my book of the month pick for this month, for December. I'd honestly give this a 4 out of 5. The beginning to me was a little slow. I wasn't feeling connected, but honestly, it was like big Italian family for me that did it. It was just very snug. I read it on Christmas Eve, basically, so it just made sense. Like, I think for what it is, which is like a Christmas holiday romance, it was really cute. There's like a gelateria involved. I think the plot line, what the main character does is like a little frustrating, but I still think it's realistic. When people give book reviews and they're frustrated with like the main character's choices, and that's why they don't like the book, I'm like, but it's like realistic. It's like people do this in real life and then they have to like deal with it. I don't know. I think that it made sense to me what the character chose, like based on her own past experiences, if that makes sense. If you haven't read this book, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. It's January, so you're probably not interested in reading a holiday book now anyway, but next holiday season, I would definitely recommend this. I don't know, I really liked it. Okay, next. I finally did it. I read the first Magnolia Parks book. I half listened to the audiobook for this, and I would definitely recommend doing a combo. Again, for the Britishness of it all, it definitely adds a certain flavor of subtext to it that like I just don't get when I'm reading it myself. It's like a British cheeky Gossip Girl. If you haven't read it, I mean, so many people love this series and love these books. Jessa Hastings is such a good writer, and what I love about this series is that I feel like she takes a very trivial thing and writes about it very intelligently. It really is kind of like stream of consciousness of these characters. I remember reading The Untethered Soul, which is like the spiritual book, and it talks about if we were to like hear the thoughts in our mind and speak them out loud for a whole day, like we're all crazy. Like the thoughts that come into our head are like insane, and it's like living with like a crazy roommate, I think the book kind of describes, and that's kind of like what this is. It's just hearing people's like unfiltered thoughts about everything. It's really funny and it's really amazing, and in some ways relatable, in some ways not. I love this. I would give this a 5 out of 5. I love the new covers too. Then I was like, okay, I'm gonna read some quick nonfiction, and this I did not do any audiobook for. I read Let Me Tell You What I Mean by Joan Didion. It was my first intro to Ms. Didion. I will say the foreword in the beginning, not written by her, was some of the most pretentious shit I've ever read, and I almost put the book down and like DNF'd it, and then I was like, this is not Joan, I need to read Joan. And I did, and she was great, and I loved it. It's just basically a collection of essays. A lot of them are really short, like a few pages long. They go by really quickly. I read this in a day. If I wasn't super into the essay I was reading, it was like over in 2 seconds. Highly recommend this if you're looking to get into more nonfiction. The last essay was my favorite, the Martha Stewart one. I would give this a 4 out of 5, personally. It feels weird, me, a booktuber, like rating Joan Didion 4 out of 5, but just like from my own experience, like it wasn't for me like a 5-star read, but it was amazing and I recommend it because she's Joan Didion. And then the last book I read, I put that book down, I put Joan down on the 29th, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I need to finish the Throne of Glass series before the end of this year. And I have been putting this off for so long, Kingdom of Ash, because it's 980 pages. I was just like, I'm gonna forget what happened. I read books 1 through 7 all the way through without any interruptions in between, and I think that was a mistake. I think if you're reading a long series, you should like pepper in some stuff in between just to like keep the momentum up. I really had to like refresh myself because I finished the tandem read in September. I was a little like, wait, what was this? What was that? So yeah, I would definitely not recommend waiting that long in between reads, but anyway, I read this. I did it. I read it in 3 days, which was definitely a feat for me, and I did no audiobook with it. I would give it a 5 out of 5. I mean, it was epic. Like, it was an epic ending. It might be my favorite book in the series. There were a few things at the end where I was just like, Sarah, really? Are we doing that? But honestly, I loved it. Anyway, this series is amazing. I think if you're going to read Sarah J. Maas, I would recommend reading the A Court of Thorns and Roses series first, then Throne of Glass, and then Crescent City, which I'm reading now, actually. Anyway, yeah, this was a really good reading month. I had a few, obviously. Well, I had just 2 that I didn't really love, and then I had some 5-star reads, so we love that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I loved December. Like, it was such a fun reading month. I felt a lot of momentum, and I'm excited to continue tackling these series that I started, mainly Magnolia Parks. Crescent City I'm reading now, like I said. I have a lot of books that I'm really excited to read this month. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you on Friday. Bye bye.